All right, as always, 5:30, y'all know what time it is. Me and Chris Griffin of the Horns Down podcaster here. One of the things, man, we got a lot to talk about today. Rarely in the off season do we ever have the opportunity for as many topics as we have today, especially with spring games, recruiting, with transfer portal news. But we need to start with my Tide, right? Because an
Yeah.
article was published today that the Crimson Tide now have a new NIL collective, and this is big news for college football. The Crimson Tide now have what's called high tide traditions, and this is going to be a game changer for how Alabama is able to recruit. I know all of you sitting there, you're probably rolling your eyes because Alabama recruits very well already. However, in the changing landscapes of college football right now with the transfer portal and with NIL, we don't have to assign names to the team. Everybody knows there are teams out there utilizing NIL. I'm of the mindset that if it's legal, go for it. If it's in the rules, go for it. It's all good. But the part that was tough for me was the lack of transparency across the board into what was allowed and what wasn't allowed up until the very end. Then NIL got passed. Everybody was on a different page. Alabama now on the same page as Texas, Texas A&M, as some of the California schools. So this is going to be big. Oklahoma is doing some very similar things right now in the NIL department as far as establishing collectives to establish athletes with people. When you hear this, right, as an attorney first and foremost, and then as a fan, when you hear as this collective is forming, what's your thought there? And then as a fan, what's your thought when you hear a big move like this?
I mean, the biggest thing is just making sure that I guess the bylaws, the terms, whatever the case may be, you just want to make sure that they're structured in a way that is going to be, not only presentable to in-house, but also presentable to the public for everybody to understand. That way there's clarity, there's full clarity on the situation all the way through. Because the thing is, you don't want people are going to attack it on its face, but you want to be able to sit there and just kind of laugh or just sit there and stay mum and just simply say, okay, well, I get that, but on its face, that's what you're arguing. But if you kind of look through it, it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? But as a fan, I would say we talked about this a while ago. It was, I think the first time I talked about this was with my aunt, and he brought up a good point. It's only a matter of time until the actual blue bloods of college football get into the fold of this whole NIL thing, meaning that Texas A&M and Texas fans alike, not even going to take a dig at either one of their fan bases, but they'll be the first ones to jump on a space or whatever the case may be and say, oh, well, you're a poverty program, you're this, you're that. Well, it's one of those things where they have to understand that blue bloods will get theirs at the end of the day. Lincoln Riley leaving OU, and I think you can attest to this too, has basically made there's been a resurgence in the enthusiasm, the excitement around the program. So now there are donors, there are boosters left and right lining up to give money. You look at OU staff, they went from having the core of coaches to now having, it's like 20, 30 plus analysts on at OU now. That's like unheard of. You know what I'm saying? So the whole thing is that you would have thought that this would have been a slow process, that it would have just built upon itself, but it's going fast. And the whole thing is that you guys are doing more are doing it externally now, whereas we're still trying pretty much catching up kind of to that SEC trend, right? But at the same time, you can see what's happening because you can see the money is flowing through there because we did not have this a few years ago, right? With Lincoln Riley. So it's one of those things where point blank and simple, it was only a matter of time until the blue bloods, like the core blue bloods, the ones who win championships, the one who are actually relevant year in, year out. Okay. It was only a matter of time before they caught up because Georgia is going to have money. Texas A&M is going to have money. Texas A&M has had money. They've had money already. NIL is we act like NIL is something new, awful lot, knowing that how dirty these coaches were. Anyways, we could talk for days about how many players pull up that are freshmen that are driving, the Denali's and Suburbans, different things like that, right? but schools like that are going to be able to get into the fold. I mean, look at USC. Look at the deals that Caleb Williams is able to get now. And the whole thing is that all they have to do is just kind of go in their backyard. They don't have to kind of go out. They don't have to go outside of a scope like an Alabama or even a Georgia would, because you're in Hollywood, you're in LA. So the whole thing is that you just have to go in your backyard, and there's a deal for everybody, even from small to big. Get what I'm saying? So, no, I mean, just from a fan's perspective, like I said, I'll say it again. I mean, it was only a matter of time before those type of blue bugs, the top tier, the top echelon, caught up.
So you raised some interesting points, and I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with someone in the NIL sphere, someone who's making moves in the NIL sphere. Mm-hmm. And I was just basically not even I didn't have the conversation for content. I had the conversation because I am curious, right? Coming from the legal background I am so curious as to what the future holds. Because this landscape, it doesn't look like it's stable at all, right? Like it looks like it's the furthest thing from stable. And so I was really curious to someone who was in that landscape, like what's the stability looking like? Got a lot of questions answered. But one thing, let me say this and I'll let you go. One of the things that I was told that stood out to me, people are not acting as rational investors when it comes to NIL.
Yeah.
Okay. There is, and this is something where people have come in my comments, and I've even thought, right, like, oh, well, people are going to be interested in a return of investment, not necessarily saying that they want a return of investment, but some sort of equity coming back. That is not the case at all, apparently. It is literally a pride contest out here, is one of the things I was told. And that's what's so interesting. That's one of the things you said that I picked up on was when you said, oh, well, these boosters, they want to pay money, right? One of the things why I say what happens at Alabama right now is so key in the grand scheme of things, even if Alabama doesn't have Texas money, even if they don't have Texas A&M money, because both of those institutions are so heavily backed by oil. I mean, we're talking real old, deep-rooted money.
That's
right?
blood money.
Different money, different money.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have that, an institution such as Alabama, they might go to a recruit and say, okay, well, we can't write you that check, but we can write you a check for this much. And by the way, our institution develops at this rate right here. So at the end of the day, you have a much higher chance of making much more money. This is why it evens the playing field. And look, we'd be remiss if we had this conversation and didn't point out such a Jacksonville State, right? Being able to get in a Kevin Coleman, a very top heavy wide receiver, former 5-star, and then the number 1 player in the country, Travis Hunter. So NIL has the ability to change the landscape of college football. I completely agree with you that blue bloods will continue to be blue bloods because they're going to find a way to prevail. This is what they do. So it is really intriguing. Go ahead.
And I was just going to jump in and just say, like, you got to understand that the NIL, the NIL blueprint is going to, you got to look at that. Okay, if it was just like a regular old contract, right? You would have to look at those terms as living, breathing thing, right? Because it's going to be ongoing, because it's going to fluctuate how it's going to go. You never know. They may put a cap on how much a student athlete can make. They may put a cap on how many NIL deals he or she can take per semester, right? Stuff like that. Now, if you just look at the contracts that are coming in, not the overall like umbrella or just branching blueprint per se, but if you look at it from, okay, for example, I know a guy who told me, he was like, yeah, I do. I asked him, I said, what type of NIL deals do you do since you know all the players? He said, well, I just autographs, And so I wanted to see the contract, because I was like, well, I'm an attorney, so why not? Why couldn't I just jump into it? And so when I looked at the contract, it was so basic, so simple. And I know that it's not going to be like that always, because, Canes, places like that, like I'm thinking about Spencer Rattler, the bigger the tier of the business, the more complex the contract is going to get, right? But those contracts are all pretty much standard. And it's just kind of, hey, you understand this, you understand that, you understand you won't get paid if you don't do this, you won't blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I could definitely see why it would. Because, you're basically making a investment with no expectation of how it's going to go, because at the end of the day, one, you don't want to be tied to some kid that way. As far as if they don't pan out or if they do something wrong, you don't want to be tied to the kid. You want to be able to have an easy out. And then two, you don't want to be tied to the kid and the fact that if something doesn't work out at school, you don't make good on your money. So if Evan Stewart's little brother wants to go to Texas A&M, but Evan Stewart is on the way out, Evan Stewart's little brother can make his own decision, opposed to Evan Stewart telling him like, hey, probably shouldn't go here because this is what they did. I went here simply for the NIL, yada, yada, yada. This happened, and that person, they took all the money away I had and then asked me back for the money that I had already used, right? So, I mean, it's just a really complex matter. It's a really complex thing. And I mean, there's not going to be any easy answers or solutions. And the biggest problem with NIL, honestly, is the NCAA themselves, because they tried to get ahead of the legislation that was being passed amongst the states, and it's kind of now kicking them in the butt. So
I think the thing that's so crazy to me is the NCAA passed NIL legislation without actually looking at the states that had previously passed this and expectation. Exactly. They took none of that into account, which is why Alabama just repealed the NIL laws that they had passed about a year ago today. Then 6 months later, 4 months later, the NCAA NIL legislation comes out, and it's far less restrictive than, say, Alabama's state law, than Florida's state law. So really, while this is a good thing for me as an Alabama fan, inevitably Oklahoma's working on something. I'm not surprised that y'all are still working through it, right? Because you just got new staff. There's far more pertinent things to get worked through with the new staff than that right now. Let someone else kind of put that together, and then you'll be fine there. But the point that I'm going to make here before we move on is this program, though great for Alabama fans, and I'm very happy for it, it exposes the larger problem within NIL right now. The fact that different states are bound to different sets of rules based on the legislation that state has passed, because the NCAA did no due diligence when it came to passing their law. Yeah. That just can't happen from an overbearing organization. Like that just... it goes to highlight why so many people are frustrated. The Daring Pastry says the NCAA created a damn FFA. And like, this is why people get frustrated with the NCAA. Because they do stuff like this.
Well, there's so many people making decisions on that board. So think of it like this right here. Okay. So me, you, Jance, and JP are all in the car. I'm driving and I say, hey man, what y'all want to eat? JP says, man, let's get something real quick. Y'all want to go to Subway? You say, no, I don't really want to get Subway, bro. I'm like on this cut. I'm dieting or whatever. So you say, hey, there's a 54th Street or something like that right up the road. How about we go there? They got really good food and we can watch some games. And let's say that Jansen's like, you know what? I really don't care. Take me to Church's Chicken. Well, let's say that 30 minutes have passed by and we're still trying to figure out what we want to eat.
That's a good point.
Let's say another 30 minutes are going by and let's try to figure out. It's too many cooks in the kitchen, right? So there's not a unified voice amongst the NCAA. It's just a bunch of people that are working in different departments trying to make a decision, and rightfully so. I won't say they make bad decisions all the time, but it seems like 7, 8, maybe 9 out of 10 times they're making poor decisions. So, until they get their act right, or you see the SEC expand to 20 teams and create their own super conference, you won't see any real. I guess you won't see any real change. And that's the reason why it's going to be ongoing.
We're not going to find out the answer to this anytime soon, but what you just said, it was a brilliant point, really something that I've never thought about, but it raises a question to me. How much of that jumbling bureaucracy is the entire reason institutions such as Texas and Oklahoma saw the writing on the wall and said, let's go to the SEC? This league is inevitably where most of the attention is on. Right. I'm not saying this because I'm an Alabama fan. I'm saying when we look at pure numbers, right? On viewership and revenue, SEC reigns on both of those, right? That's just, it makes me wonder if y'all saw the writing on the wall that the NCAA was so fragile and that a super league could be created to effectively nullify the NCAA, if that was a real big reason in making the move. Because you didn't move to the Big Ten. You didn't move to the Pac. You didn't move to the ACC. You chose the SEC, right? Which, great move. Y'all's brand is going to add a ton of revenue to the SEC. The SEC is going to add a ton of revenue to your brand. I thought it was brilliant what you and Texas are doing from an SEC fan's perspective, from an appreciation of both y'all's institutions, but it really has me wondering that.
I mean, to be honest with you, I'm just going to say we can get rid of let's put the NCAA to the side. Sankey. Not, excuse me. Yeah. No, Bowlesby. Excuse me. Bob Bowlesby. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason he just stepped down. Sankey's the truth.
Sankey's the truth. Bob Bowlesby is the truth. I mean, Texas and Oklahoma have both had their rumblings about a lot of different things. And so it's just the league could have, what he was doing, I think we talked about this time and time again, could have looked at Louisville. There was times where Florida State was interested in jumping. There were better teams than what you're going to be getting, or better programs back then. Now, granted, Cincinnati has placed themselves in a world where, everybody thinks they're pretty legit, and we'll see what life after, Desmond Ridder and that bunch, what's that like for
it's a good sports city, though. I mean, I went and was pleasantly surprised with the college scene at Cincinnati. I'm not saying it's Austin, but I'm saying
for years, everybody's been saying, go grab BYU, and they've always flirted with the idea of Houston, but it took OU and Texas leaving for the Big 12 to actually have to say, we got to figure this out, and we got to figure it out real quick. So,
I mean, yeah, think about it like this. The SEC, think if you're Greg Sankey and all of a sudden the two biggest brands in the SEC say, okay, we're out. You got to make some stuff shake quick. But with that, man, let's talk about some of these spring games we saw over the weekend. Texas A&M and Clemson, I think, is a great place to start. You wanted to hit on some Nebraska as well. You watched that one. I actually haven't gotten a chance to really go through that one, so I'm very interested in hearing from you there. But let's start with A&M, because I think it's natural with the recruiting class they just got that all eyes were there. And this was my takeaway, right? Please, if you're watching, comment down below so we can get your takeaway. We can start interacting. But my takeaway was this. The defensive line prospects they got, man, they got some dudes. Anthony Lucas was a problem. Number 8 for Texas A&M. That dude was a problem. He had himself a game. He's going to continue developing. He's going to be a dude. Adelaya, I think is how you say his name. He's someone who they got last year, got hurt, really flashed in the spring game. Their secondary even, Bryce Anderson, number 1, true freshman, real good kid, got the opportunity to speak with his dad during his recruiting process. Great people. They were between Texas and Texas A&M. He flashed. But man, oh man, it was tough to watch those quarterbacks throw the ball that afternoon. It was rough watching those quarterbacks spin it. And Jimbo said there was a wind, and if I'm not mistaken, we looked it up, and there was a 10 to 20 mile an hour wind. I'll give him, I saw 2 throws in the entire scrimmage. 2 throws the entire scrimmage where I was like, okay, well, that was a fade ball where you're leaving it up. Reasonably, I can see the wind affecting that. The overwhelming majority of those throws, the wind had nothing to do with. It was poor decision-making, poor throw. So Texas A&M, they have all this talent. The defense, I think, is going to be solid. I think the defense will be solid. Their defensive line coaching staff is pretty darn solid. They've developed pretty well. They got some dudes there. But that offense, what are you thinking when you look at Texas A&M's offense? Because the quarterback position hasn't looked any better. And granted, it is a spring game. This is a spring game.
Ty, no.
Oh, no.
I didn't watch it. I didn't watch it in depth like you did, but I did catch, I would say probably about, so if that video was about 30 minutes long, I probably watched a good at least 14 minutes, the 14 minutes that I could before, I was on a lunch break, so I had to get back to my clients or whatever. But man, when I was watching, I was looking at those quarterbacks. The first word that came to mind, I was like, man, they look goofy. I was like, something doesn't seem right about this offense. Running game, skill position wise, I was like, you know what? They're all right. And I'm sure they'll be able to make some plays, but I was like, it just is not working for me. I thought Max Johnson would come in there, take the job hands down, but it's a toss up. I mean, either you go with the true freshman, Haynes King did not look good out there at all. And then Max Johnson, you're just like, oh boy, this is still a work in progress. This is definitely a work in progress. So it's hard to say because Texas A&M was a wild card, but just like I always say about Baylor having to come to Norman and Austin this year, they have to come to Bama this year as well. And I'm just saying, like, I don't necessarily know if it's going to translate. You could have a hell of a class, but if you don't at your key positions, at some of the more important positions, if you don't have those guys coming, or you don't have those guys stepping up, it's going to be hard. And quarterback, that's where they struggled all last year as well. I mean, Calzada had one amazing game against you guys. He had a game of his life.
Isn't
And
that
then
how
everybody else,
it always seems to happen like that?
He was pedestrian the rest of the year.
Oh, for sure.
So I mean, I really don't know. And it's hard to not sit here and say that Jimbo Fisher for sure is going to do what he's always done, and that's go 8-5 this year. It's hard to say, and that's giving him a bowl game. That is giving him a bowl game. But
so one of the things that I found so interesting about this game when I'm watching it is JD and we sat down and did a video talking about Texas and Texas A&M. That'll be out tomorrow, but we did it right before the spring games, right? And we were discussing the quarterback situation at Texas A&M. And one of the things we were talking about is not talking about the freshman, Weigman, right? Because he just got there. We kind of need to see a bit from him. But if we're talking about Max Johnson versus Haynes King has a higher ceiling. Max Johnson has a higher floor. If you watched that spring game and didn't know anything about those two guys, you'd be concerned about the future of the quarterback position. I do say it is a spring game, not to say like anything is to be excused.
Yeah.
But the one thing I will give Max Johnson is maybe he's still trying to work through this new system. I don't know, right? Theoretically, Weigman is the only one that has an excuse right now. He should be taking his high school chemistry class right now. I'm fine if a true freshman quarterback looks like they don't really grasp what's going on in a spring game. Cool. You probably don't, and that's probably okay. But at the point where that kid right there has legitimately played his way into the conversation of starting, that's where I think we have a problem, right? Weigman has got a high ceiling. He's nice, but wow.
I mean, he's a 5-star for a reason, but when you're throwing picks,
that was Haynes'
spring game. Yeah, when you're throwing picks in the spring game, that's a cause for concern.
Not good at all. I do want to address this right here. Sean says if Texas A&M doesn't win the West, Jimbo's going to be gone. You're not wrong at all, Sean. There is a level of expectation that is now upon Texas A&M that they haven't known. And with that comes positives and negatives. The positives is it can resonate in recruiting, right? Because there is this lofty expectation. There's this expectation that it's natty or bust. Kids want to be a part of that, right? So that's one thing. The second thing I'll say is I won't hold any judgments this year because a lot of these guys are freshmen. But in 3 years, if they don't make some things shake, we're going to be having a conversation here, and I don't know what that conversation is going to look like. You certainly have a point there. You certainly have a point. The Daring Pastry asks if I think that the quarterback play caused the wide receiver Chapman to enter the transfer portal. I don't know anything on the inside. Anything I say here is going to be pure speculation. I think that Evan Stewart won. We saw that they pushed the ball to him during the spring game. They forced it to him, deservedly so. That kid is so talented. For those of you that know my channel, you know I'm high on him. But the other thing we need to remember is they also have Chris Marshall, 6'3", 195 wide receiver who hasn't stepped on campus yet, who is also a 5-star. So that could be it, but very talented player hit the portal regardless.
Say, said was it Kyle Field?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kyle Field, where 5-star wide receivers go to die.
Did you
Because
see the Jonte Cook video?
I didn't see that.
So you know the one where he went to Texas, right?
Oh yeah. He did that to Texas A&M as well.
He did the same thing to Texas A&M. They showed him like some fan awards for the 12th man, and he goes back in the locker room and he's like, "I'm not gonna lie, I still ain't seen no football trophies." Hey, I got to watch him at that Pylon 7-on-7.
Yeah,
He put on a show. He shut that place down. Like he is about it.
all
I
those swimming trophies.
I left there, Chris. I left there thinking to myself, I hope Bama has him as a top priority
Oh,
because he was doing it big out there. I mean, really unbelievably talented.
speaking of Bama and wide receivers, we got to touch
Yeah,
on that
no,
topic.
absolutely.
But if you don't mind, let's go ahead and switch gears. Let's stay on this whole thing about questionable quarterback play.
Yeah.
And let's go to the next team, which is Clemson.
Whoa. Question.
I did not, when I put my phone down from watching their spring game, I said, well,
What I
I'm
tell you?
not convinced. I'm not convinced. Defensively, I have no problems. I have no problem. Same terminology, same system, different coach, but he's going to bring his feel, but it's still going to carry over, at least for this year, what Venables had installed there, just for continuity purposes. I feel like they're going to have different calls, different things like that, but at the same time, I mean, he was right underneath Venables, so he knows that system and all the rest of that. And Dabo wants to still play that type of ball. I can tell. Plus, they have guys over there. They still have guys over there. Now, let's go to the quarterbacks, bro. I have no idea what they're gonna do with DJ Ungululele, however you say his name. The thing is I saw a comment on the YouTube, and it what I was gonna say, it really opened my eyes. I didn't realize this. Dabo Sweeney has come out. No, excuse me. It was on Instagram. I saw a little thing on something. Anyways, this comment said Dabo Sweeney has come out and said that DJ is definitely going to be their starter. And somebody in the comments said, yeah, he said this about
Kelly Bryant.
Stout. He said this about the guy that was there before Taj Boyd. He said that about Kelly Bryant before Trevor Lawrence came. He said this plenty of times before, and they're like, look, that kid, that Klubnik is going to start at some point during the season. But at the same time, a lot of people weren't really high on him leaving that game as well. But at the same time, he's a true freshman that should be probably taking, he should be taking earth science right now instead of out there, against freaking Breesy and all the rest of those guys. But nevertheless, I would say this right here. I am not sold on DJ. He's still selling balls. He's still not making the right reads. He's still not doing some of the things that you want to see for a second-year quarterback with all the hype in the world.
It's so wild to me. I'm going to write it down right now. I'm going to text JD after this, and we might actually hit that this week as well when we get together. I don't know what's happened with DJU. Right? Because I'll be the first to admit, I was super high on him coming out of high school. Kid had all the intent. I mean, you could set a trash can or a barn, right, on the other side of Denton, and he can hit it with the football. I'm fairly certain he could throw a pass from my house to your front door.
I'm going to tell you what the problem is, Ty, and then I'll let you finish your point.
Absolutely.
The problem is that offense, that scheme is archaic. Look, one of the things a lot of people don't realize, go back to the year that LSU won a national championship and they beat the hell out of Clemson. Go back to that season, okay? One of the games, you know what? We just switched gears from that team. Texas A&M. Go back to that game. Texas A&M had every opportunity to be in that game. They had every opportunity to seize momentum and all of that. Go to that game and then go to the Louisville game as well with Trevor Lawrence and watch some of the 50-50 balls he just throws up there. And T. Higgins and guys like that are coming down with that because he has big, athletic, rangy wide receivers. You may come out there with a 6'2" cornerback that you're just like, man, he's fast, he's rangy, he can move. Yeah, but T. Higgins is like 6'4", a legit 6'3",
Justin
6'4".
Ross before the injury.
You got and he's just throwing balls like that up there. They're doing the little sprint run that they like to do. They're doing all those plays, and ETN is making guys miss and being able to go. So my point is that you don't have that continuity at wide receiver. You don't have those type of guys at wide receiver. And then on top of that, you have guys, don't get me wrong, you have guys who are 4 or 5-star guys out there, but at the same time, you don't have that guy, right? But when you look at that offense with Tony Elliott and even going now, it's not good at all. And it's being exposed because the problem is that people have tape, and then 2, you don't have the athletes that you had. Trevor Lawrence made that offense go because he was able to trust his wide receivers in ways that DJ just can't right now. And so, I thought something that was funny. I followed this Clemson account, and I followed it way before, the word about Venables came out. But I follow this little Clemson account. It's kind of like a fan account, but it's pretty popular. And I saw a picture one time, and it said, if we had this DJ, we'd be playing for the national championship. And it was DJ walking off the field against Notre Dame. And so it's like Clemson fans, and I think just fans from afar, are trying to figure out what happened to that DJ. What happened to the DJ that led you guys back from pretty much being 28 down to Boston College, who played amazing football in the span of 2 games, to now looking so, I wouldn't say bad, but I'd just say he's definitely not playing like that, right? So, sure. In my opinion, I think it's the scheme. I think they have to, if you're going to run out there with DJ, I think you have to go and talk to him and say, okay, here's 100 plays in our playbook that we want to run. But please tell us, what do you want to run? What do you see? Because the more, it seems to me, the more fluid passer and a person who actually understands and can run that system is sitting behind him and is most likely going to take his spot.
Well, what's more, Cade Klubnik, this is the thing with doing it live, right? I'm so hard on myself. If I was recording, we'd have started over right there. We'd have had to redo 32 minutes of a video. My word. So the thing that's interesting with Cade Klubnik, there we go. When he was in high school, I think it was right before his senior year started, there was an article in 24/7 Sports on him that was fantastic. And they were talking about how as long as they've rated, I think since 2005 on, every quarterback they've rated 3-star and up, he had the lowest interception ratio. Like he just doesn't, Cade does not turn the ball over. I also got to watch him in state against Quinn Ewers, which both of those dudes, they played a heck of a ball game that game. Both of those guys lit it up. I mean, it was awesome to watch those two go back and forth. But I was so impressed with Cade, right? Because you know how much pressure is on you. You're playing the #1 quarterback in the nation, like Quinn with Southlake. And yeah, you're at Austin Westlake, but still, I mean, Quinn could do no wrong. And I mean, Quinn had a great game. Don't get me wrong, but Cade went out there and did his thing, man. So I'm really interested in Cade. Very interested to what he's going to do. But I think you make a lot of great points as far as the offense is predictable. The offense, when we look at Clemson, they have done great things, right? I'm not here to take away anything from Clemson's run, but they had some special quarterbacks, offensively speaking, that made those offenses go. Their defense has been solid. I don't expect that to change. I think they've kind of figured out what they do on defense. I think Venables has helped establish something on that side. I think that Todd Bates has helped establish something on that side that will last, right? I'm not saying they'll be the same. I'm saying they have a blueprint. Whether they follow it, that remains to be seen. Offensively, I don't know what you do. Because if you're doing a spring game, and people in the comments, let me hear how wrong I am if you think I'm wrong. Chris, you'd let me know as well. If I'm doing a spring game with a new offensive coordinator and a quarterback such as DJU, who came off of a year in which he had, if I'm not mistaken, 9 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, I'm making this offense very simple. You have 2 reads. It's here It's here. If it's not there, dump off. Boom. Every time. I want him to complete 60, 70% of his passes. I don't care if it's for an average of 3 yards per completion. I want to get your confidence up.
Yeah.
I want you to rain out these completions. And instead, we saw another anemic offense. I don't know what you do. I really don't. Clemson they're one to watch right now. Because I think, well, here's a great question. I want to hear from people in the comments, and I want to hear from you. What are your expectations for Clemson's season this year? And before I have you answer that, I do want to address this. Sean says, starting to think don't take West Coast high school QBs. In fairness, Sean, we have to remember Matt Corral, CJ Stroud, and Bryce Young all come from within about a 30-minute window of each other. I mean, so yeah, but you're certainly not wrong. There have been plenty of high-ranking West Coast guys just not pan out, no doubt. But let me hear your expectations for Clemson, and then I'm very interested. If anybody's listening, drop them down in the chat.
So okay, let's dive deeper into this real quick. Okay, so your first 3 games, okay, your first 3 games for Clemson, you get a chance to really get him comfortable. Okay, now. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. I'm gonna blow through it. Georgia Tech is your first game. You go to Georgia Tech September 5th. September 10th, you come home against Furman. September 17th, you're home against La Tech. So, in all honesty, Clemson should be able to feel really good about themselves going into the next game, which will be the 24th of September at Wake Forest, and that's going to be a really good game.
That Wake game is one to circle.
Yeah. So the Wake game,
like Sean, right now I have them at 3-0, but I don't know about that Wake game.
So the Wake game, I'm looking at the list right now. So you got they got the Wake game, and then the next so they're playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks straight. They're playing 6 weeks straight. So they come back home after Wake Forest and play against NC State, which that should be a win, at least at home, you would think.
I'm going to let it be known right now. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have a soft spot for NC State. Always have.
Yeah.
They're a ton of fun to watch.
So then the next week they go to Boston College, and it's hard to really say what Boston College is going to be like on October 8th. If that's a night game, then possibly we could talk.
Yeah.
And then after that, they're back on the road on October 15th. So they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 weeks straight. That's 8 weeks straight. Matter of fact, they're on the road against Florida State. I really don't know what Florida State is going to look like this year.
I have that as a W for Clemson.
Yeah. Then you come home against Syracuse.
Syracuse, for whatever reason, always plays Clemson well.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they always play Clemson well. So, I think Daniel said, I'm going to say they're 9-3 when we first started. Daniel, I think you might be onto something there.
Their toughest slate, I think, are the last 4 games. You're on the road against Notre Dame.
Ooh.
You are home against Louisville. You're home against oh shoot. Well, I mean, 3 out of their last 4 games are at home. I mean, you're at home against Miami, which is big because Miami could either be trending up or down by that time. And then your last game, you're at home against Spencer Rattler in South Carolina. I
think 9-3, 8-4. That's real.
Yeah,
that's real.
I think, somebody said in the comments, they said that, hey, their run game is going to be big. You have to look. In my opinion, I think Pace is the better back, or at least he was more productive. Now, Will Shipley was hurt. However, just looking at the style of run and the style of that offense, I don't think it really fits Shipley all that well. But his sophomore year, they should both be better. But you do have a good combination with those two at running back.
But here's what worries me. Sean says he might go to that Clemson USC game. That would be a great one to go. I actually have an uncle that lives in South Carolina, and I might need to text him. That's the game right there. Here's my question though. Daniel, you asked about the Clemson run game in the comments. Chris, you brought it up, so I want to hear from both of you, putting you both on the spot. Okay, if your passing game is still anemic, what stops me from just sitting in a 3-4, loading up the box and daring you to throw it?
That's what I mean, look, even against Texas this year, but especially against Texas last year. Now, granted, Casey Thompson, and we'll talk about him in a second. Now, granted, Casey Thompson had a really he had a above average year. It was not average by any means. It was above average. I'm gonna sit there and tell you, okay, you can run Bijan all day. That's fine, but I'm gonna have guys in the box. He's not gonna be scoring touchdowns out the wazoo. He's gonna make him,
my presence.
yeah. He's gonna have to make at least 2 or 3 misses just so he can break 10 or 20 yards. But when you're looking at somebody like, but when you're looking at Casey Thompson and Hudson Card, who were coming to last year, they both were unproven. Well, you're saying I'm going to load the box. I'm just going to wait on you, man on the outside, and we're just going to see. But against Clemson, that's what I'm going to do. I want you to make the decisions. I don't want to make Pace or Shipley the hero. I don't want your wide receiver. Justin Ross, I don't want any of them to be the man. I want DJ Ugalele. I want him to go out there and show me that he can carve my defense up. He's going to have to pass for at least 250 plus yards for in the first half just to get me out of that sitting in the box.
I'm like you. I completely agree because I would bank on the fact that, okay, well, I know DJ has the ability. I know if something goes off in his head, he can throw it all over this yard.
Yeah.
Until that goes off in your head, you're going to have to show it to me because I'm stacking that box. I'm sending blitzes from ways you don't know. I'm mixing things up. It's going to be super, super intriguing to see how how defenses attack Clemson. Someone said there's only one USC. That's always when I was a kid. I always got so confused when people would say USC when we'd be talking football, and I'd be like, "Oh, the Trojans this," and they'd be like, "No, Carolina." Or then I'd say Carolina this, and they'd say, "No, Southern California." That always got me.
Let's switch it up now, okay?
Nebraska, yeah.
So we talked about the SEC, we talked about the ACC. Let's go Big Ten country, okay? Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm gonna sneak one in here before we get to. You know what? No, let's go to Nebraska. Okay. So what I saw in that Nebraska spring game when I was watching it, I saw, okay, this defense it seems like it's going to be a bit better. They did lose some key pieces to that defense, I believe. I think they may have lost was it a safety or a corner? I'm not sure if everybody's returning. Regardless, though, that D line, that run game, it looks really good. It looks pretty darn good. And that was the strength of their team last year. It really wasn't the secondary. It was that D line. They were able to control a lot. Yeah. The defense kept you in a lot of games against us, against Ohio State, teams like that. Offensively is where you struggled last year. So I was saying this earlier in the space. One of the things that I want to see offensively is, okay, let's break this down. So first and foremost, your starting quarterback will be Casey Thompson. He looked polished out there. He looked poised. He made the right reads. Offensive line, I don't necessarily think they're the greatest because when guys are blowing past you and basically being able just to lay a whole hand on your quarterback and get a sack, offensive line needs work. But I will say that Nebraska added some key pieces through the transfer portal. If you look at Bryant, the running back, he doesn't have that blazing speed, but he can take it. He can take it home if you want him to. One of the things to also look out for him, he's really twitchy back there. I think he had like a 40, 60-yard run. And I know that contradicts what I said about good run defense, but that was just one run. But he did break
to account run defense for the quarterback running, right? Yeah. Was everything covered and he was just outside the pocket? Because then it's a different scenario.
It kind of looked like the whole sprint run that we were talking about with Clemson. Kind of looked like that almost. Where I know Casey Thompson handed the ball off, ran to the outside. He ran inside, made a quick twitch. Made one guy miss, got to cut inside, hit the outside, hit the numbers, and he was gone.
I'm excited for Casey Thompson.
Yeah.
I
So
am.
So I mean, as far as the run game, I mean, Bryant, he looked pretty good out there. I mean, they're gonna be tough, physical, and all the rest of that. I think the problem is for Nebraska is Scott Frost going to over game plan like he did last year for some teams. He over schemed. Now, one of the interesting and one of the bright spots of Nebraska's team is the fact that they went out there and hired the offensive coordinator that was at Pitt.
That's right. Oh my gosh. And they
Yeah,
got a transfer because of that.
yeah.
That guy orchestrated great offenses. I
Great
completely
offense.
forgot about that hire.
So
You're
the
right.
whole thing is that I think that he can work wonders with Casey Thompson. However, I will say this right here. You looked at Nebraska last year and you said, okay, they went like 3-9 or whatever the case may be, whatever the record was, 3-9, 4-8, or whatever it was. And you say they were in all those games. Well, one of the things that I would say is that you're looking to transition to Casey Thompson, and you're hoping that he can make those one or two plays that Adrian Martinez couldn't have made last year. So you're saying, will he actually stay in the pocket and try to make something happen? Is he going to be able to make the right reads, or are we going to be turning the ball over here and there? Because on critical drives, critical moments in the game, the first play of the game or whatever, Adrian Martinez, either he was fumbling the ball or he was throwing the ball away. He would look great the first 15 minutes, the first quarter of the game. Then the last three, you were just up, down, all around. We lost, right? So I think that's what they're banking on. But I'm just thinking, is Scott Frost going to overcomplicate that system? Because the whole thing is last year they were just a gadget play offense. All they ran was gadget plays. When I watched the OU game, I was like, my Jesus! I was like, they're basically running misdirection with the run. They're running inside run games, inside zone games, inside schemes with all of that. But it's like they're running misdirection with the passing game too.
Well, the craziest part to me for Nebraska, I think you hit the nail on the head. But the one thing I would add was once you got to halftime, Nebraska was infuriating at lack of adjustments
Yeah,
coming out of the tunnel. Oh my. I think I messaged you a few times
yeah,
during the season saying, like, they are not helping Adrian Martinez out a lot. Why I'm intrigued is in the areas I thought they would need to help Adrian Martinez, I don't know that you need to help Casey Thompson the same way. And that is intriguing to me because if you're not making the adjustments to help out that player, if all of a sudden that player may not need those requisite adjustments, hey, we're having a different conversation. And
yeah,
that's where it's going to be interesting. To your point, Nebraska, there were a few games there where if we replay them, there's a reasonable W sitting
yeah,
at the end of that
yeah.
game for Nebraska. Their season could have gone a bit, I'm not saying anything crazy, but a game or two easily could have fallen a different way had one play changed. So they were as good as I've seen them in a bit under Frost. The record doesn't show it, but in terms of like, man, if some things didn't go wrong, you might have a different season. Can Casey Thompson give them life? Right now, I'm hoping yes. I truly am. My dad was a Nebraska fan, which was a major point of contention in the house. But I remember, right? Because I told you I grew up on the horse ranch. So Saturdays, if we had to be out training horses or whatever, we'd record. My mom was recording the Alabama game, the anything, and my dad was recording the Nebraska game. So I've watched a lot of Nebraska's games, and I grew up watching Nebraska. I remember Eric Crouch. I remember the black shirt defenses.
Mhm.
I mean, I have got a deep familiarity with that, and to see them what they are now is almost perplexing compared to how dominant they were.
I think I think for some programs, and I know I talk about like, we wanted to get back to that physical nature of football and all the rest of that with OU. So I don't want to sound like I'm being a hypocrite. But what I would say for some programs like Nebraska, you kind of got to put that stuff in the past. I mean, it's been
20 years.
20 years, 20, 30 years since you've actually been like actually relevant.
Late 90s. Yeah, it's been 20 years.
they've made Big Ten championship games, different things like that, but you haven't won anything that has been worthwhile in a while. So I think it's one of those things where, as a Nebraska fan, you don't forget your history and all the rest of that, but you can't hang your hat on that. You got to start anew somewhere. But
But NIL, that's something that could really help Nebraska. And
no, Nebraska crippled themselves. That's a poor way to put it. Nebraska hurt themselves by going to the Big Ten, and you know it. I know it. Everybody on this chat knows.
I don't disagree whatsoever with that. I don't.
They isolated themselves from being able to go and get those kids from Texas and everybody in the Big 12 country, and now you're looking at Scott Frost, who has a lot of Florida ties, and every so now and then he will be able to get a Florida kid and different kids like that. He's able to really, get kids. It's almost like Nebraska sometimes in my mind. I laugh about it, but they're like the D1 last chance you sometimes because they'll get transfers out of the wazoo. I'm like, where did this guy come from? This guy was a 4-star. He's a 5-star, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I mean, he's pretty much on the second chance there. So, I think Nebraska could go 8-4. I don't think they're going to beat us, but
I don't. I just think y'all are in two different places, right? But I think they're on the upswing. David,
I want to see them do well, but man, it's hard to sit here and not say that this is Scott Frost's last year.
Well, let's be honest. How many of us are surprised he's made it this far? Like, look, I'm happy you got a job. That's awesome. I'm never going to wish for, but how many of us are genuinely surprised he's made it this far? If he wasn't the prodigal son, right, from Nebraska, he wouldn't have made it this far. He's made it this far because of what he has meant to that university as a player.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Also, the UCF success helps, don't get me wrong, but they just have to do something. We were asked one thing, and I want to put it up here. Someone asked, will Ohio State win the Big Ten? I don't see how not.
I don't see how not.
CJ Stroud is a dude. Like, he is so good.
McJigba is a dude too. And I think that their wide receiver core is going to be better than it was last year.
Jackson Smith and Jigba, it's funny. We have a friend who trains horses out of Whitesboro, Texas. And they are real big in the horse industry, but their cousin or brother, I forget what it is, they were a coach on Ohio State, right? I'm not going to say last name. So I've always, since I was young, and this guy's been at Ohio State forever. Casey is an Ohio State, just like alum super fan. He's got season tickets, the whole 9 yards. I told him the second they got Jackson Smith and Jigba, I said, you got somebody that could end up better than any of the other guys on the roster. And I said that when Olave was there and Jackson Smith and Jigba was not even on campus yet. I said, This kid's special. I've been wrong a lot, but I'm very happy there. But no, Jimmy, I don't see anybody stopping him.
So let's go to the next team. And y'all, look, we'll be more in depth on this stuff, I think, after we kind of have time to, kind of let it set in. But let's go to the next team out of the Big 12, Michigan. I'm going to be honest with you. I left that game. I left watching that game thinking Michigan can either be good, not really good. Either they can be good this year or they can be really bad. Because my problem with Michigan is simply this right here. Not Harbaugh. It's not your defense. McNamara is not the quarterback to put you to get you over. He's not. And I think that if anything, you saw that against Georgia, he's not that guy. I think the true freshman this year, I think he gives them more. He's more of a threat out there. He's a dual threat. He's a solid dual threat. He's not a great dual threat, but he's a solid dual threat. But I don't know. McNamara just not come off. Huh?
You got to replace your offensive coordinator.
You got to replace your offensive coordinator. The offense, it looked really old school. I'm going to be honest with you. It looked really old school.
And the thing that when we're talking about Michigan, I do want to say Emeka Egbuka, Jimmy, he's really nice. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Hillbilly, be nice. Someone cares. Someone out there cares. We got to cater to everybody. But so Michigan's a one-hit wonder. The thing that I'm concerned about with Michigan, you have to replace your offensive coordinator in Gaddis. Your offense was decent last year. It wasn't world-beating, right?
No.
It wasn't close to where it needed to be to get Georgia, right? My problem is you have to replace your offensive coordinator. That's going to be a question mark. And Ohio State just hired Oklahoma State's defensive coordinator. And if that ends up working, Ohio State's defense is going to be better. They've got athletes all over that defense. They got dudes sprawled throughout it. So if Knowles goes there and has a great run and can implement what he wants to do, I just look at Michigan and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what's next. I don't think they're going to have a bad year. I don't think they're going to be a bad team. I just don't think that they're going to be the team they were last year, and I think you have to be.
You kind of caught Ohio State you caught Ohio State at the right year, to be honest with you. But I think overall, I think the Big Ten may be a little bit better. I mean, you got to look at a team like Wisconsin. Wisconsin is one quarterback away from actually making some noise last year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, look, there's some intriguing football in the Big Ten right now. I had a lot of fun watching Big Ten.
I hate the Big Ten conference. I'll just be honest with you, but at the same time, Ohio State is there's no way that I'm not going to pick the field. I'm going to pick Ohio State, and I don't think
picking Ohio State, no doubt.
I don't think it's even close. And I think one of the problems, and what you saw is that even though Michigan State's head coach and Michigan State, they went and did a patchwork job, which was a hell of a patchwork job, hitting the transfer portal as hard as they did, they're still not on the level of Ohio State. And you saw that Ohio State beat the hell out of them.
No doubt. DeAndre says Wisconsin looks identical to Michigan, though. Here's what I'll say, DeAndre. Wisconsin consistently does more with less.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think we're both of the position here. I don't mean to speak for you, Chris, if you disagree by all means, but I think we're both of the position when we say they're a quarterback away. If they get that quarterback, they've showed us, like, hey, they got it. Yeah. Michigan under Harbaugh, I won't say they've underachieved, but I also can't say they've overachieved, and David makes a great point. They've lost edge rushers to the NFL, but here's what I'm going to do. Daniel, you're a consistent viewer. You're here all the time. David, Charles, I want y'all to hold me to it. DeAndre, Ohio State's winning the Big Ten. Think it right now. Send it in. Ohio State. Not only do they have C.J. Stroud, they have Emeka Egbuka, they have Jackson Smith and Jigba, they have Travion Henderson.
Yeah.
That offense is sick, and if Jim Knowles can get that defense right, they're winning the Big Ten. I don't put the faith in Michigan. I don't see anybody that's going to be able to truly test them.
Here's the problem with Ohio State last year, and it all boils down to the fact that for year in, year out, for at least the past 4 to 6 years, they have had guys on that defensive line. They didn't have that guy on that defensive line this year. They were a linebacking play, and the front seven were not good. They were not up to standard. That was not Ohio State type talent.
We also have to remember, if they get it right, they do still have, what's his name?
Is it Jack Sawyer?
They got Jack Sawyer, they got J2 Tuimalau, and then they got Amari Abor out of this pass class. Yeah. All those are 5 stars. So, like, if they get it right, they can get it right. I am intrigued, but bank it right now. Ohio State winning the Big Ten, right?
I just don't see. Yeah, I don't. Barring injury, I don't see how you're going to be able to stop. Yeah, how you're going to be able to stop C.J. Stroud and the rest of that crew. And I think that coming in, I think that you would be stupid to go out there and try to bracket or double team Smith and Jigba. I think you better pay attention, because I still have hope for Flemings. I think Fleming still has a lot. He has. I mean, this is kind of make or break year for him, or he may have to look at the transfer portal because the rich keeps getting richer, and Hartline's going to keep recruiting and getting better quarterbacks. Better, even better wide receivers as well. So, yeah, but overall though, I would say, hey, Michigan was okay defensively. I mean, they look kind of like they did last year. They were able to get out there, do some things, but offensively, either they were keeping it really vanilla or they're kind of in trouble because it seems really old school what they're trying to do. They're not. I could probably point out the times that I saw shotgun, but I will say that McNamara, I'm not sold on him. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm just not.
No, I agree. So now we're going to go to some questions in the chat. There's some that I've been catching. Sean, you asked about Hall and Bama, but if I'm not mistaken, you had another question earlier asking OU about the playoffs, them or another team. If you wouldn't mind asking that again, we'll talk about that. But do we think that OU is going to try and get Hall from Bama? If we're simply talking about ability, you should. But I don't know if he's a culture fit.
That's what I was going to say. I brought that point up to today in a Twitter space where the text was said. Shout out to said, but basically what I said is that you got to look at Justin Harrington. He's walking on to this team. That guy was like top 10 JUCO transfer, and he's having to walk on to this team because of the way it went down with him leaving the team. So was he correct to be upset? I would say probably so, because a lot of things have came out about the last coaching regime and with a lot of stuff that was going on behind the scenes. So were they totally honest with him, how he was going to play, where he was going to play, all the rest of that? I don't know. It seems to me that they weren't, but his actions as far as leaving the team is what kind of left a salty taste in everybody's mouth. But you look at a guy like Venables who preaches character. I don't necessarily know if Venables would want to mess with that as being a CEO of this program. Or on the other hand, I don't necessarily know if Jai Hall is going to be able to swallow his pride and understand that, hey, I'm going to have to kind of leave some of the prima donna stuff over there to the side. That way I can actually show these people, hey, I'm me, I'm real, I'm ready to go play some football, right? So, I mean, the ideal place, I think, for him right now, from what it sounds like, is Texas, because he has that history with Sark. But at the same time,
I think Jeff Banks also recruited him, or was involved in the process, if I'm not mistaken.
So, I mean, I really don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where you go to Alabama, you gotta be mature. It's a job. It's not something where you just show up and you're gonna have fun, you're gonna do all that. No, it's the job. Like, you're going there and you're auditioning every single day. And it's built like that. The program is built like that. It's built to the point where you look at you come into the facilities on Tuesday and you see somebody over there kicking and throwing and doing all the rest of that because they're looking at that guy trying to see, okay, maybe I should switch this guy out. Maybe I should sign this guy. You get what I'm saying? You guys have an NFL culture there. Let's just be honest. So, like I told some of those Texas fans, I said, I pretty much mentioned you, but I was like, yeah, I have friends. We've been talking about this. It's been an ongoing problem all year for Alabama with Jai Hall. I mean, it goes back way past. You hear the rumblings coming out of spring ball, different things like that, but then it exploded whenever his dad got on Twitter and yeah, right. So,
no.
I mean, I'll ask you the same question. Do you think Alabama would take a chance on? I mean, not Bama, but do you think Bama would take them back, or?
So here's what's so perplexing to me. I'm not going to say anything because I don't know the whole story, and anything that I would say would be pure speculation, and I don't think it's right to speculate on somebody's person. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to do that because he's a kid, and I can't imagine being as talented as a lot of these players trying to manage expectations. I'd probably be a head case if I was them. So I don't want to speculate on someone's person. But Nick Saban gave the Musim Muhammad speech, man. Like, do y'all remember the Musim Muhammad speech where he said, where do you want the kid to go? Do you want the kid to be in school or do you want the kid to be out in the street? And Nick Saban said after that, I feel very strongly about this. Who was right? Well, Musim Muhammad now played in the NFL, has got a bunch of daughters, and one of his daughters just graduated Princeton. That same guy basically had Ajayi. That's the same guy that suspended the Ajayi Hall from the team. The guy who went in front of the media and gave such an impassioned speech about second chances and someone having a home. That's my cause for concern. I've never seen Nick Saban do that.
Mhm.
Nick Saban, as rigid as people think he is, he bats for his players. Like, he has torn the media up, right? Talking about his players. I've never seen that. So if it's a situation where it's all good, Ajayi Hall passes expectations, maybe OU takes him, but I just don't see how Brent Venables could say a lot of the things he said in regards to, like, oh, well, this is the type of person we're looking from the transfer portal. And if
Yeah.
everything happened the way so many people thought it did, I just don't see how it's a fit. And I don't know that y'all really need wide receiver help in that
I don't
regard.
think I don't think it's really that much of a need. Um, I wish you would have been on that space to hear the ridiculous stuff they were spitting out, but I don't. I don't think it's that much of a need. But I also would say, I mean, I'd like to have him if we could get him. He's a
Everybody
talent,
would.
but at
Everybody.
the same time, I mean, you just kind of have to see if he's a culture fit. Yeah, I
His
mean,
let me revitalize that. His ceiling is
yeah.
that good.
Well, one of the things that I talked about earlier today was just a simple fact of you got to look at why he would have that type of attitude coming into the season. Outside of Mechie, we didn't know who was going to be the number 2 guy, or we didn't know who was going to be the other guy. Right? We all said Mechie needed a sidekick, and we didn't know Jameson Williams was going to do all that stuff. Right?
15
But
yeah.
yeah. But coming out of the spring game, you felt pretty damn good about Jai Hall just because you see the grabs, you see the different catches, some of the plays he was able to make, and you're like, hey, I know he's a true freshman, but that guy is the guy to watch out for. So you're an 18-year-old kid feeling really good about yourself. Everything is going your way. People are wanting to talk to you. NIL deals are starting to, stuff like that. But it's not translating to the field. You're not getting any tick. So when you're not getting any burn, I mean, it's kind of easy to fall into that. I mean,
Yeah, and it's one of those situations where it's just a lot that goes into it, right? It's just a lot that goes into this. There were some things in high school, apparent. Like, there's a lot.
Yeah, I mean that's too much to bring all that stuff up. I think it's just plain and simple. Yeah, plain and simple. You're going to a program that gray shirts kids. You have to wait a year, and then we'll kind of we'll reevaluate things or whatever and see if we still want you or whatnot. So when you go to a school like that, you have to understand there's a certain expectation, right? So you have to understand a certain expectation that this is how things are going to go. And it just because you don't see the field does not mean that you won't see the field, but you're going to have to work for it and earn it.
It's going to be interesting to see where he goes. I think USC is a team to watch as well, right?
Yeah.
I just think that would make sense. He's a coastal kid. Miami, Florida, both of those make sense. Texas is another one to watch. Although frightening, my guy, y'all don't need wide receiver help right now. You need those offensive linemen. Don't worry about Ajayi Hall and get those offensive linemen from Georgia. No, frightening and I, we've had countless conversations about this. He completely agrees with me here. Like, he knows.
So something that some of the Texas fans brought up today was that as far as spring ball is concerned, they've been in heavy 12 personnel. And I'm like, what? Now I'm like, y'all don't use tight ends. And they're like, well, we're going to use Billingsby. We're going to use Javonte Sanders this year. And I'm like, okay.
They got to.
Okay.
They have to. They have got to. Okay, yeah. What did he say? We don't need to talk. We don't need anything except no. You need offensive linemen too. Don't get me. You need offensive linemen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it like this: the last thing you want to do is put Campbell on one side and then Banks on the other, and bet on those two trying to contain Will Anderson and Dallas Turner. And the next thing you know, their confidence is shot because they've each allowed 5.5 sacks. Your skill players are nice, man. Whether we're talking Isaiah Nayor, Xavier Worthy, you got Jordan Whittington there. If O'Meary can stay healthy, I really am so high on O'Meary. I think he's going to be a great talent. Jaleel Billingsley is a really, really, really talented tight end, but that offensive line has got to come together. My goodness gracious. The defense as well, but that offensive line, I would be hitting up both the Georgia transfers. I'd be hitting up Tyler Steen out of Vander. I'd hit up everybody. I'd call everybody.
I mean, so you're gonna go on a massive U-Haul. So the thing is, you gotta think with all 5 of those offensive linemen coming, and then on top of that, you still have a good part of your core there. I mean, you're gonna have almost 10, 15 guys in your old line room.
Yeah. And if they transfer, they transfer. But I'm not going to be satisfied with what no. I'm not letting teams tee off on me, man. Like, no.
I mean, you can't take that chance because the problem is that
this. I don't mean to interrupt you. Frightening is right. From what I've been told, there was some. This is the reason Texas hasn't. Because I asked a Texas person, why haven't y'all targeted Steen?
Yeah.
Why aren't you? Why are we going after Steen? Right? Like, why aren't y'all? And this is what I was told. So frightening, you're definitely onto something there. I'm really sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. So what I was going to say is that here's the problem: is that if you run Hudson Card out there, Hudson Card is more mobile than Quinn Ewers, I believe, right? Or at least I would say he has the better body type out of the two to be more mobile and actually be doing.
I think he's a more natural runner outside the pocket than Quinn.
Yeah.
Quinn's got a little bit of athleticism to him, but you really don't want him outside the pocket. He's at his best. So
basically what I'm saying with that is that if you start Card, this is the problem that you go into, right? This is the problem that you go. And this is just me speculating, right? If you start Hudson Card, then that means that Quinn Ewers was A, not doing the things he needed to do, B, to win a spot, B, or B, he just wasn't good enough to win that spot, right? So you run Hudson Card out there, and then boom, he gets injured, come back. Then guess what? Oh, well, damn. Now we got to start a true freshman, right? All hype, no tape, right? But on the other hand, if you start Quinn Ewers, and then for some reason he's just not cutting it out, then you come in there with Hudson Card and you do the whole thing with Casey Thompson and all the rest of that, and you mess with both of their mental. I mean,
brother, that's how you get fired if you're Sark.
You
played a dangerous game last year. It can't be played. I know some Texas people who are still high on Sark, but are like, that can't happen again.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. So Sark is really in a difficult position. I think he's a really great offensive mind. I think he'll figure it out. But I'm just saying that you're kind of in a bad spot because the whole thing is that he can look great in a scrimmage against the Texas defense. I think everybody last year looked great against them, especially in the second half. But either way, basically what I'm trying to say is that Sark is in a tough position, especially knowing that his offensive line is not going to be that good this year. Because the whole thing is this right here. Somebody like Levy, who's known for that, he can live in a 12-man personnel. Sark shouldn't. Sark should have.
They have athletic tight ends. If he's going to do it, I said the only silver lining here, and this is a projection silver lining, but I'm just putting myself in the place of Sark thinking about it. If I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, well, at least Billingsley and Sanders, they're athletic dudes. I can really make someone pay. So there's that. But I'm playing devil's advocate looking for silver linings here.
Yeah.
Someone asked how bad did DJ look? Bad.
Yeah, bad. He didn't really look up to speed either.
But the offense looked bad, Bobby. It wasn't just him. It was the offense.
I think as far as the ceiling, I think Texas can win at least 8 or 9 games this year. I really do. I see this. I see their schedule. I think that they can win 8 or 9 games this year.
So, as someone says, John asked, offensive line is everything. It's absolutely everything. And getting away from it, I just don't know what you're going to do. Sean, you asked the question, and I asked you to re-ask it, and I don't want to not answer it because you did that for me. Sean asked earlier, I don't want to scroll back up and then lose everything. Who would make the college football playoffs first, USC or OU? I'll let you take that one first, since you actually have a dog in this one. I'm the outside looking in.
Now, obviously, my heart wants to say OU, which I'll say just
we're gonna have
personally,
to see,
I think so. But I would say realistically, I would probably lean towards USC simply because
I don't disagree. I'd say probably OU because the interesting thing here, Sean, is these are two different questions.
Yeah.
Really, right? Like you've asked one question, and let me explain, right? You've asked one question, but there's really two different questions here. One is USC has an exponentially easier path
Yeah.
to the college football playoff. Exponentially easier. Dave Aranda there has shaken up the whole Big 12 for y'all. That guy is so much fun to watch defense. Like, there's just much more. I know
I wouldn't necessarily say that.
Oh, man, Dave Aranda's.
I wouldn't necessarily say he's came in and
shits on
shaking
us
up
all the
the Big 12. We still got to remember, okay, he won a Big 12 championship. We'll give him that. This was a really good year for them. But he had that same talent on that year before, and he got his ass handed to him plenty of times.
But it was his
So
first
I will say this, just like a game, just like a one-on-one game out there with your dad back in the day, or back out there with your uncle or just one of your friends, you got to confirm it. You got to confirm it this year. That's the problem with OSU. That's a problem with Texas. Texas and OSU want to talk about this. They want to talk about that. However, when they do beat OU, the problem in the last decade, or hell, 20 years, last century, whatever you want to say, when they do beat OU, they can't confirm it, meaning that next year they can't string together 2 or 3 wins in that series. They can't.
I'm just saying he flipped a 4-win team, bro. Like Aranda is nice.
Look, what's the coach for the Panthers?
Oh, Matt Rule.
He did the same damn thing. He did the same damn thing. He did the same damn thing. And that team was just as worse. He did the same damn thing. All I gotta say is about Baylor and Dave Aranda. Great defense, all of that. That's fine, right? If Jerry Bohannon is not taking that step, let's not act like they beat OU by 30. Let's not act like they beat Texas by 30 as well. And let's definitely not act
as talented as either of the teams.
But let's definitely not act like those games weren't at home and that played into it. I'm telling you now, when they come to Norman and when they come to Austin, hell is going to be waiting on them. Nobody's going to be playing around with them. So if they go out there and drop a game against Texas Tech, TCU, or if they drop a game to K-State on the road, it's going to be harder to get up for a game talking about, oh, well, yeah, we'll be fine. Yeah, you're at home. You should be fine. Your team, your crowd and everything's going to be behind you. It's not like you gotta sit there and realize you're sitting here putting a lot of stock in Dave Aranda, but you refuse to talk about Gary Bohannon. You refuse to talk about him.
Because they're going to have some stuff shake. I'm saying from a schematic point of view, right? Whether they were at home or away, a less talented team out-schemed a lot of teams in the Big 12. And that's just the fact of it.
And you know what? That goes to the point. That's a perfect point. You know why? That's a perfect point. And that's the reason why personally I think OU would have the better route, the easier route, or the more straight and narrow route to the college football playoffs, because I don't think you're going to have that problem this year. I don't think there will be a game where you literally sit there and say, well, yeah, they out-schemed us this year. And the reason why I say that is because, just like I said earlier today, the problem with Lincoln Riley out there at USC, it's not the Oregons, it's not the Utahs of the world. It's the Cals, it's the Arizonas, it's the Arizona States, it's the Stanfords. It's those teams who are going to give him the most problems. Think
I mean,
about
no
it.
doubt. But
Yeah,
I just look. I've seen Dave Aranda up close and personal for many a years. That
yeah.
dude is unbelievable when it comes to.
I'm not denying that, but I'm sitting here telling you that it's gonna be different this year. It's gonna be
Yeah, I
different
mean,
this year.
I'm very excited to see it. But whenever I look at this, I just think that USC right now has the ability to capitalize off of hype to add in more 5 stars with less competition to get to the college football playoffs
Yeah,
than does an OU, right?
yeah,
Because
but
OU
at the
gets to the
same,
SEC. Now we have an entirely different conversation where it's OU and the SEC to the college football playoffs or USC and the Pac.
Mhm.
And then the answer is USC has an exponentially easier time. And
I
not
will,
necessarily that that's OU. My
yeah,
team included Alabama, Georgia, LSU, whoever you want to put in there. It's just one conference is loaded and one's devout.
yeah. Well, I wouldn't even say that. I mean, like I said, we're going to see this year. Can he actually can he do those things? Can he correct those problems that he had at OU? I mean, at the end of the day, Lincoln Riley is a great is one of the best offensive minds out there, and he still is. Even how everything shook out. But the problem is I'm telling you, is that it's not the Oregons and the Utahs. You should worry about those teams too, because they're going to play a physical style of football. But when you look at the Cows and the Oregon States of the world, those are games on the schedule that you say, oh, well, just translate that over. Iowa State, K-State, teams like that. You're going to be like, oh, yeah, those are games right there. I wouldn't pick them in because I feel like they're going to lose, because that's what Lincoln Riley does. Look at the
I still think that he got to the playoffs in the Big 12, right? And so if the question is simply who's got the easier route,
uh-huh.
I think it's got to now who's in a better position for
Yeah,
playoff success? OU right now. OU
yeah.
is in a much better. If both teams made the playoffs tomorrow, OU is in a much better place for playoff success than USC.
But here's the thing that I think you're forgetting too. Ty, you were hella critical of Caleb Williams.
Yeah. Oh no,
So I
I'm.
mean,
No,
it's like I get what you're saying, but you're just jumping to the conclusion. You're not even showing your homework,
I'm not
because the
jumping
thing
into
is,
anything. I'm saying as a conference, we've said
mhm,
repeatedly the Pac-12 is the weakest conference there is, and that doesn't
no,
change.
I get that, but at the same
That's
time, you're
essentially.
sitting here saying that you're betting on Caleb Williams to take the steps that you want him to take.
I'm saying I don't know if it's necessary because the Pac-12, I put that little stock in. That's my point. There was
Mhm.
no top 10 defense in the Pac-12 last year. My whole thing with Caleb is it's easy to ball on a defense that's rated 155th in the nation, but when you get to a defense that's top 10, things change.
Mhm.
There was nobody in the pack that does that. And so you're not wrong. I'm not saying that there aren't teams that won't give them trouble. I'm not saying Caleb doesn't need to develop. My point is the games that gave Caleb trouble were the first times he'd played a defense that weren't a high school defense. He's going to be playing Pac-12 defenses that aren't that good. That's the only reason that I'm just looking at this and I'm like, I think you have an easier path.
Yeah,
But like I said, if both teams were in the college football playoff tomorrow, I would bet OU to win.
yeah,
Like if
for
they played
sure.
each other in the playoff, OU wins,
Mhm.
I think. Like that's not I don't really think much hesitation on that.
I'm just speaking at just from a, I think I can speak on behalf of most OU fans and just say, I mean, the things that kind of left, if Raleigh left six Big 12 championships, all the rest of that stuff, we could go on and on about the players he's had drafted, all the rest of that stuff, right? He still had great years here. However, he still left OU on a bad note. And people can talk about the way he left, but let's just think about all the stuff that he left on the table. 2018 national championship game, some of the other playoff runs that we've had. It's just a lot left to the imagination of what could have happened. What if we weren't tripped up by K-State and Iowa State and Rattlers' first year as a starter? You get what I'm saying? So, I mean, that's where I'm coming from. I'm saying that if you watched every game last year, you know our struggles and you
Oh
know
yeah.
what we struggled at, where we struggled at.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I'm telling you now, it's just a simple fact of we had Perry Young Renfrey, Benito, Isaiah Thomas, guys like that on that defensive line that you're like, hey, these are big time players that are going to get drafted high. They're going to be they're going to go at least if not day one, day two at least. Day two, maybe, late rounds, right? But I'm saying that when you go out there and look at USC, you don't see any of that.
No, they've got USC defensively. I'm really intrigued as to what they're going to be able to do defensively.
Yeah.
Because that's my biggest question right now, right?
Yeah.
That's my biggest question with USC. Is it's one thing, and I'm not meaning this as a shot, right? Because we've said so many times, I don't ever take shots at teams that have made it to the college football playoff. I don't care what the result was. You made it to the dance, and it is proved incredibly difficult to be one of those 4 teams.
Yeah.
If USC goes to the playoffs, let's just say, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, I'm saying for argument's sake, let's say they make it to the playoffs this year. For argument's sake, they're going to get mollywopped.
Yeah.
Like someone like Bama, assuming, would hang half 100 on them because the defense just isn't ready yet. If they get that, I'm intrigued, but that remains to be seen. I just don't know what the defense is going to look like. Best move Lincoln Riley did, though, was hanging on to Dante Williams. Best move he did. Best move. That was a brilliant move. And honestly, I would have maybe even thought about promoting. I don't know that I would have taken Grinch, but that's neither here nor there. I don't know that I would have brought Grinch with me. I might have just tried to get someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the better moves that he did was make sure that, Roy Manning wasn't coaching cornerbacks. But, here are some points that I would say, you just point out as a simple fact of you look at OU right now. And I know a lot of people talk about the defense is multiple, it's pretty complex. It's going to take some of the other guys out there a while to learn it. I mean, you're learning new verbiage, new language, all the rest of that stuff, new scheme. Well, one of the things I know is kind of been that's floated out there is just a simple fact of a lot of guys on the D line can't really run. They don't pre-snap motions, different things like that, because what you were being taught was, okay, you have one read, you have this one snap, blah, blah, blah. You see that stuff, basically just go. So they weren't being taught the proper techniques, right? And so that's what I told you. That's what I'm most excited to see at the spring game, is just to see, okay, what's actually being taught out here? Are they being fundamental? You go back to Nebraska spring game and you look at them and you're saying, okay, they don't necessarily have a star out here. I mean, they'll find somebody to make a star or whatever. They don't necessarily have some guy that you're just like, oh my gosh, but you have a lot of NFL talent out there simply because they're fundamental. They play sound football, and they're not going to beat themselves. You're just going to have to basically be better than them. They're going to be physical. They're going to do all the rest, all those things that an old school, hard-nosed, hard-hitting football team would do. But when you look at what Grinch left, you left a lot of talent, but you left a lot of talent that's still raw.
You left a lot on the table, is what you left with your Grinch in terms of.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's kind of where the argument for us two is coming from. For me, it's just a simple fact. I know what was left on the table. I mean, I had to really live that and feel that while y'all were playing for national championships and all that. I had to sit there on the sideline and be like, "God damn, we had a championship team the last 3 years."
No, I'm not even going back that far, right? Yeah. Because I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that argument. It's certainly a logical argument. Everything holds weight. But I look at recency, right? It's as simple as this to me. What did those defensive tackles for OU do during the season? Very talented. A lot of them. Very talented. Put up a great season. Versus what did they do in the Pro Bowl?
Yeah.
Looked like a different player, right? It looked like a different player. That says something to me. Not saying that what Alex Grinch does is wrong. That's not my contention. My contention is it was wrong for that group. And you can't try and make your scheme fit a group. You have to make your scheme work within the group instead of making the group try and work with your scheme. That's what I meant.
I mean, and that was the whole thing. I mean, you're hearing really good things out of camp about the defense, but you're hearing that. Go ahead.
No, just G. This is a great point. This is a great point by G. This was a great hire. Yeah. The D-line coach from Michigan, that was a great hire. So,
I mean, but that's the thing that you're hearing is that, for the defensive line, it's it's pretty much you need more consistency out of guys. Even Jalen Redmond, you're saying you want more consistency out of guys like that, but you're also saying that, hey, there's certain things that we're having to kind of teach that we thought were going to be taught. But because you get the feel from what Venables is saying and from what a lot of them are saying is basically, we really like our team. We really do like our team. But this is going to be this is going to be a process because there's certain things that these guys just have not been taught that we're going to have to do, especially if they want to be able to run in this defense.
Yeah, no, I don't look. It's one of those things where, and Bobby's saying, and Bobby, you said earlier, Bama showed chinks in the armor. I don't disagree. Bama's offensive line last year was just not good. And at the point where both of those wide receivers went down with a bad offensive line, I won't say they were bad. That's me being a frustrated fan. Inconsistent. The writing was on the wall. But you're 100% right, Bobby. He can spin it. He can straight up spin it. But what I was going to say, Chris, is I think it's easy to see when you look at what OU has from what people don't get is they saw everything OU lost, and they're sitting there and they're like, okay, well, they must have nothing left. You lost a lot. But when you look at what OU has, if you're aware of what these dudes do, if you're aware of who they are, you're looking at this and saying, man, there's something here. Like, this is something that you should be excited about. I'm not saying college football playoffs this year. I'm saying a team that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
It's one of those things where give me after the Texas game. Okay. Yes. The Nebraska game. So that's a 3-game stretch that you got to look at. You got Nebraska, K-State, and then you have Texas.
That's ridiculous, Sean. Yeah. Not what you're saying. The fact
No. I know.
That's ridiculous.
And I think it's a ridiculous point simply for the fact that you lose Winfrey, Benito, Thomas, and then obviously Caleb Williams. You can even throw in Spencer Rattler, however you want to feel about him, right? You lose Jaden Hazelwood, guys like that, and Mario Williams. Well, now the sky is falling down, right? Well, you're going to lose those guys anyways. Besides Caleb Williams, you're going to lose Spencer. You may or may not have. There have been rumblings about Mario Williams wanting to transfer anyways. He wanted to go back to be closer to home. Those were rumors way before we even played the O State game, right? So yeah,
the opposite way.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that you just say is that Lincoln Riley, it's not like he just left OU without a lot of talent. There is a lot of talent out there. And there are guys
for portal.
Yeah, exactly. And there are guys out there who haven't really gotten a fair chance simply because there was a certain way you're supposed to practice, certain way you're supposed to be able to even see the field. So the whole thing is that now you have a collection of talent. You have a true collection of talent because everybody gets a free chance. So some of the guys that you were like Dennis. You know what I'm saying? Like guys like that, you're like, okay, well, I haven't heard that name in a while. You get what I'm saying? And then you're seeing Justin Harrington coming back into the fold. I mean, you're going to see a lot of dudes out there, and you're going to see a lot of stuff in the spring game. You're just going to be like, man, I'm really excited just to see who's all going to really pop and who's going to really make that next step. So I do think it's ridiculous that people think that a team that went 11-2, that's keeping, I would say, probably, what would you say? We're not talking about stats. We're just talking about they're carrying over at least about 80-90% of their squad from that year prior, except for those key guys. It's crazy.
I'll take the argument a different route than you, just to kind of prove a larger point that we can look at this from multiple different angles to disprove that OU isn't a top 25 team. So everything you just said is logical. We're going to sidebar that because it's all there. So that's over here. I'm going to create an entirely new argument over here. That new argument consists of, I don't care if you brought back 50% of what you had last year based on what you got out the portal, plus the coaching, plus the state of the Big 12. I don't see how you're not a top 25 team in a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
I can take that approach and still feel very confident in my argument. The OU not being a top 25, I hate to break it to you guys, that's for clicks. Because
So
they know that they know that y'all are going to click on that. That's what that is.
If Lincoln stays and Caleb stays, obviously we lose Winfrey, Perrion, Isaiah Thomas. I keep saying those names. We lose those guys. Probably lose. You were going to lose Jadon Hazelwood regardless. He was going to leave.
Probably.
And then Mario Williams. Let's say that he leaves, right? With Caleb Williams here, OU probably would have still been ranked inside of the top 10 next year. As is.
Yeah.
So now you take a dip, and it's just funny to think that OU's not even a top 25 team, and then it's funny to think they're not even a top 15 team right now, as is. With the talent, the continuity, the coaching, all the rest of that. That's what's crazy to me.
Now, here, in fairness, and you know this, but I'm just going to say, I'm also high on Dillon Gabriel.
Yeah.
And so that is one of the things I look at is I'm also very high on Dillon Gabriel. I think whenever he has an established relationship with Jeff Lebby and they've had success, one thing we need to understand is this is a situation where both of these guys had success together. They both went their separate ways. One of them went their separate way, but in theory, they both went their separate ways in terms of new people, new systems, and they both improved. They both grew, and now they've found each other again. I really like that. So I'm a little biased there. I really like what y'all got there. You didn't lose much in terms of offensive line. McCade Matoyer is someone who came in, started 28 games for Cal out of 29. Yeah. Really experienced. So even if he doesn't start, the competition he creates, you love to have it. The depth he gives you, you love to have it. And when I look on the defense, I think there are names there. I think that we look at players and think like, okay, well, that guy, since Caleb is Caleb and since Caleb's ceiling is as high as it is, because one thing, and you've heard this, right? Give me this much credit. As much as I as much as I was hesitant in anointing Caleb as college football's quarterback one, I've always been very forthright that his ceiling is a quarterback one in the entirety of college.
Yeah, I mean, we both said it. He has we said it the last podcast we did. He has a higher upside than Bryce Young and CJ Stroud.
And look, this is as simple as it is to me. I think Bryce Young has got just about the highest ability that you could have. Caleb Williams possesses all the athletic ability Bryce Young does, and does so in a more pro-ready frame or valued frame. Y'all get my point when I'm saying this, right? Yeah. The only thing scouts are going to knock on Bryce is his size. That's it. Yeah. That's the only thing you have. Caleb doesn't have that knock, right? Yeah. So, but like I've said, I'll take Bryce over anybody.
Oh, we know you do. Even Colin Murray, we know what you would do. We know what you would do. We know what you would do, Todd.
That person was trying to put an entire argument on me that I wasn't happening, and I was like, Brandon, I'm here for it, but no.
But no, I mean, that's the whole thing. I think that I don't think SC is going to make the college football playoffs.
No, I don't think that they're making the
I think they're probably going to lose at least 2 or 3 games this year for sure.
I'm interested, but I don't have them making the college football playoffs this year.
No, I think making a Pac-12 championship game or winning the Pac-12 championship game as a 2-loss team. I can see that, but possibly. I don't necessarily see them. And then you got to think about, we're sitting here talking about Oregon and Utah, and the whole time UCLA is sitting over there like, hey guys, we had a really good year last year, and we're only going to get better.
Disrespectful. I'm being disrespectful. UCLA's got to prove it to me.
Yeah, well, right. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying about Baylor. You got to prove it to me.
Last year.
I get it. They won it last year, but 1 year is not going to do anything just for me.
And I'm not anointing them Big 12 champions by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying in terms of like, I don't know. I put UCLA. You're not wrong about UCLA. You're certainly correct there. Yeah. I'd put them a level above Oregon and Utah, and maybe I'm wrong there, and I'll accept that. But that's just my perception.
Hey, I wanted to, because I know we're about to close out, but I wanted to jump back way back to what we talked about earlier. One point I'll point out to everybody about Nebraska: if Casey Thompson gets hurt, Nebraska is in jeopardy. They are bad. After Casey Thompson, they are bad. Let me just say this right here. They wanted the Haggard kid, or however you say his name, they wanted him to be the guy. He has a look, he has the frame, but he did not look good at all during that spring game. Also, let me be the first to point out, I don't really know the difference between Chuba Purdy and Brock Purdy because they still make the same decision. They both make the same decisions with the football. Chuba Purdy was looking pretty damn good out there, and I was like, "Hey, you know what? He has the intangibles." Then I saw, him. The pocket collapsed. He tried to step up as much as he could. He did a jump pass, probably 20 yards away from the end zone, and he threw it into double. Well, can I even call that double coverage? Well, he had two guys. It looked like they were running deep crossers, and he threw the ball. And I promise to God, it bounced right off a defender's head. There were like three defenders right there in front of him, and I was like, no, just take the sack, or at least try to throw the ball away or do something. It looked like he was trying to get out of the pocket, but I was like, bruh, that's the same decision your brother made against Clemson. I was like, it hurt him.
Ooh, so that's a mouthful. And that's why Iowa State, I have a hard time putting a lot of stock in Iowa State right now. They lose so much of a percentage of their offense. I just don't know how they replicate it.
I'm just letting you know that if God forbid something happened to Casey, but if Casey goes down, I'm telling you, Ty, it's not going to be pretty around there. Chuba Hubbard is probably your number 2, but the distance between Casey Thompson and 2, 3, and 4 is extremely significant. It's like from the earth to the sun right now. That's the distance. It's not even close.
So what we could say is the drive between Jada and Will.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not good.
It's no.
We don't talk about Jada, though. But with all that being said, guys, thank you so much for coming in here. We'd probably meant to do this around 45 minutes and been going an hour and 45 minutes. But this was fun. This was a fun one. This was a lot of really good one. Everything. Football's coming back. Spring games are coming back. You already know next Monday we're going to have even more to talk about. Alabama's going to have their spring game this weekend. I'm going to be pumped up for that. So we're going to have a lot to talk about. We're going to have some spring practice news to talk about next week. More recruiting, transfer portal news. Y'all already know. Who are y'all claiming as the best defensive player this season? Will Anderson. Mic drop.
Will Anderson. Jalen Redmond. How about that?
I love the confidence. But guys, with that, y'all take y'all's Monday nights evening. Chris, before we hop out of here, let them know where they can find you at.
Hey, you guys can find me at Chris with a K on Twitter. I'm one half of the Horns Down Pod. You can find us at that. Let me say it again, the Horns Down Pod. And you guys can find, the Horns Down Podcast. So you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. Be on the lookout for our YouTube shows. We're starting to do live shows now, bro. So yeah, be on the lookout for us, man. Follow my guy at Seth Oliveris. He's the other half of the Horns Down Podcast. But yeah, check us out, like, subscribe, do all the rest of that. We're all around. We got amazing content, and that's about it, Ty.
Man, it's gonna be fun. I can't wait to check it out. But with that, Bobby, thank you. You said you're a new viewer. Thank you for checking it out. This is an every Monday thing. We have fans from other places come on. We just have a good time. This is all about having a conversation with friends and having a good time. But with that, y'all, take y'all's Monday evenings and take y'all's Monday evening well. I'm tired, man. We've been talking for an hour and 45. Y'all have a good evening.